It's a very rare experience for any member of the Pink Floyd to give a radio interview. I think really I think you'll agree it's an undeniable fact that there is a great mystique attached to the Pink Floyd. Do you think that this mystique really is magnified by the fact that you rarely give interviews?
Probably it is, yes.
Why is this reticence?
It's an individual thing for each one of us, I guess. There's no policy about it. We haven't got a group decision that no one goes and does anything. I guess it takes a little bit of effort to even sometimes for people like you to get through and ask us directly.
It's taken about 2.5 years.
But it took a while before I heard about it anyway. And I don't think anyone's got any specific objections to doing anything like this.
Do you agree, though, that there is a mystique attached to the Floyd?
Absolutely, of course there is, yeah.
Is this something that you've been trying to break down, or...?
Yes, I think we all have tried to break it down in varying degrees over the years. Certainly more in the last 2 or 3 years. It gets to be a bit of a burden, the whole mystique thing, because it isn't what we are, and it isn't what we want to be.
Do you think that I mean, keeping on this mystique thing, do you think that has really been perpetuated by the press because of the absence of interviews, that's all really they've had to write about, rumours about what has happened to the Floyd and, what they're doing and how they think, that sort of thing?
Yes, it's partly that. I think it's also quite... it's in the mind of the public anyway, from what our beginnings were, and the things that happened to the band in the first year or two that it was going, and the image that we certainly perpetrated at that time.
That was a deliberate thing at the very beginning, wasn't it? As far as that image was concerned, it was deliberate.
Well, no, I don't think it was deliberate as an image, but certainly everything that one could associate with us had that stamped all over it. And but it wasn't. I don't think anyone at the time would have come right out and said we were fantastic space cadets or anything like that. It's never been our idea of ourselves.
I remember actually something that happened on Jukebox Jewelry. I read in one of the biogs that when Pete Murray, or was it David Jacobs? I hope it wasn't David Jacobs, because he's one of the board of our Capitol directors, so it must have been Pete Murray, played a Pink Floyd record on Jukebox Jewelry and said something to the effect that this is psychedelic rubbish and this whole psychedelia thing is not on chaps, and we hope that it doesn't spread any further.
It won't last, yes. Well, I don't actually remember it. I wasn't around at the time. I believe it did get said, yes. He was wrong. Mind you, I mean, the guy who was writing all of the stuff then didn't last that long.
Okay, I want to take a break now, and then we'll come back with an album called Obscured by Clouds. Just back in just a minute. Dave, I want to talk about your sort of early career with the Floyd, and you replaced the now legendary Syd Barrett. Reading through all the press cuttings and bios and things, you did say that at one point you got very paranoid about your sort of relationship with the band, because...
My relationship with the band? My relationship with the audiences.
How was it? I mean, did you find it very difficult at that time to replace Mr. Barrett?
Yeah, I think, yes, I definitely did. I think probably anyone coming in to a fairly well-known band and having to stand in someone else's shoes is quite a hard thing to have to do.
Because at that time you weren't playing lead guitar, were you, at that point?
Well, the theory was that I was, yes. I didn't play much lead guitar. I was too nervous.
But it must have been extremely difficult following that man's shoes, isn't it?
Yes, extremely difficult. He's not hardly what you could call orthodox.
In fact, going back to those early days, those gigs that were done at, UFO and places like that, we hear in the sort of mythology about the Floyd that some of those gigs were fairly strange, I think would be a good euphemism to use. Were they that weird?
I didn't see many of them myself before I joined, and the ones after I joined weren't that strange. And the idea was to make them a bit less strange, I think. when I joined. I'd only seen the band a couple of times before that. In the recent history of them, I'd seen them in 2 or 3 years before, when they were still playing Bo Diddley all night long.
I wanted to talk about that change, actually, that sort of change from that R&B thing. When did the sort of departure from tradition sort of take place? I mean, obviously it sort of was over a period of time, but was it something that you sort of went into, that you researched into and sort of tried it out to see if it would work? You know, the departure from sort of, I don't know, playing strict tempos and things.
Well, I mean, when I joined the band, they already had that tradition, and more or less when I'd seen them 2 or 3 years before, they didn't. And the period in between, when I wasn't around, I was abroad somewhere, that I don't know what happened in that period. I wasn't around.
Right.
I think,
but that departure from tradition. I mean, the band has always sort of been described as being very insular in their sort of musical policy. You don't really sort of follow what is happening, you know, in the rock business per se, what other bands are doing. Was that insular feeling sort of there from when you joined at the very beginning?
I think it's probably a little less then. Certainly at that time, we did go out and play on bills with hundreds of other bands all the time. And we were quite chatty with all sorts of people in all sorts of other bands and things. I think we've probably grown more insular, but I think people probably do anyway. It's just a fact of your life.
We were talking earlier about Syd Barrett's demise, and I want to talk about the Shine On You Crazy Diamond track a little later. But the idea of Dark Side of the Moon, that was really one of the most phenomenal albums that, in success terms, that you have ever done. The obvious question to that is, I mean, when you sort of finished it and it was all sort of pressed up and mastered, did you actually think that it would be in the charts? It's still in the charts even now. Did you think it would be that successful?
No, not myself. I thought it would do better than anything we'd done before. I thought it was better overall than anything we'd done before. I thought it was more likely to sell more, but the difference between that and the others was fairly large.
Because the whole sort of concept of Dark Side of the Moon, I mean, people have been reading things into it ever since the thing came out. I suppose the dark side relates to insanity.
Yeah, I guess so.
Fine.
It's all, it's down to Roger to really explain all that sort of stuff.
The music business, as it is. And I was talking to you about the terrific pressures that a band such as the Floyd must have upon them. How do you actually cushion yourself from these pressures, from the sort of record company moguls and other people that you must come into contact with?
They're all jolly decent about it, actually. And they don't...
They're all laughing in the control room.
No, it's not that tough on us. We've laid it all on the line, I think, fairly early on about what we want to do and be in relation to them. And we want them to market the records and sell them and do all the stuff that they do, but they don't... I think they've learned long ago not to pressurise us into producing more product, in inverted commas, and all that sort of stuff.
You are very lucky, though, to be in that position. There are very, very few bands that can actually dictate that sort of thing.
That's completely true. Yes, we are very lucky. We have always done it like that, and I guess we were lucky to be able to hit it off and be able to maintain that position of power from the beginning. I mean, it is an impossibility for most bands.
Talking about Dark Side, going back to that actually, I mean, that came out, what, in 1973, since he briefly looked at the label. Do you ever listen to any of your product? I mean, like 3 years on, rather.
You're not supposed to call it product.
No, yes, it's an occupational hazard. I mean, do you actually listen to your records? I mean, 3 years on, what do you think of that now?
It sounded pretty good, actually. I haven't listened to it for an awfully long time. I haven't listened to any of these tracks that you're playing for an awfully long time. Every 2 or 3 years I dig one out and have a playthrough and think, oh, well, some bits are good, some bits are pretty poor. And, I mean, I haven't listened to Wish You Were Here since it came out, I don't think.
Welcome to the machine. Now you've heard it, Dave. What do you think?
So far, so good.
Actually, that's one of my favourite tracks, I must admit, from Wish You Were Here. Next to Have a Cigar, with Roy Harper on vocal. I add very quickly. Very complex images in that tune. Extremely complex.
It's quite good, yes. I haven't listened to that for a while.
One of the questions that obviously pops up about the Floyd is that I suppose unlike most bands where a recording studio is a means to an end, you know, just to get it on tape and do that, it would appear that as far as the Floyd are concerned, the studio becomes part of the art form with all of the things that you tend to do with the studio. Would you say that is a sort of correct assumption?
Yeah, absolutely. I really don't believe in the ethic of just putting down the music as you play it on stage with an electric guitar and amplifiers. I mean, the difference, drawing a line between electric guitars and amplifiers, which is already quite complicated science and technology, and the difference between a recording studio is very minimal. I think you should use whatever facilities you have there to their limit. We never sort of try and restrict pieces of music down to things that we think we'll be able to play on stage. We do it the other way around. We do the music first and worry about being able to reproduce it afterwards. We generally find a way of doing it.
One of the things that has been levelled against bands such as yourself who use the studio as a sort of extension of the art form is that in some way...
They don't moan at the Beatles.
In some way that, yeah, but in some way the bands sort of today that use that technique, if you like, the criticism is that they are in some way contrived. And that is something that has been levelled against the Floyd.
Yeah, that's true. I don't, it's just, I think that's bullshit.
Yes, I'm glad you
say that.
Yes, you're allowed to say that. As I was saying during that record, I think that is the definitive Pink Floyd track. One of these days.
Right on.
You were saying, actually, while we were sort of talking before we came on the air in the record library, that album, Metal, and Echoes on the other side of that, is the thing that you sort of, your definitive Pink Floyd track. Why is it that Echoes is sort of special to you?
It's in the music. We have various, I guess we attach various differing amounts of importance to different things in what we do. And certainly for myself and for Rick, the most important thing, I'm not saying it's the only important thing, but the most important thing for me is the actual music as it goes down, and I think Echoes is, and one of these days, are some of the best examples. I think maybe Roger's and Nick's priorities are slightly higher on the idea behind the whole thing and the wording. And I'm well into all of it. But my actual priority of what I think I want to be really good is the music.
You were also saying that during that one of these days that the low bass sound that we heard, sort of travelling between the left and the right, if you're lucky enough to have stereo, I always thought that was a Moog, and was always convinced that was a Moog synthesizer.
No, bass guitar.
And then you said
through echo and all sorts of other things.
And then you said, which is something that really got me, that the first time that you used a synthesizer was on Dark Side of the Moon.
Yes, I think that's true, yeah. We used one a tiny bit on Obscured by Clouds, but I can't remember whether that came before or after Dark Side of the Moon.
Before.
Was it? We used one a tiny bit on that, but hardly at all. We certainly didn't use it on any albums before that. We're a bit late coming to synthesizers.
Tough
Strange that may seem.
Tough luck, Mr. Moon.
It took us ages to work out how to make one play different notes instead of just one note at a time, tuned up. It took ages to learn that.
And the first call coming up tonight, I believe, is from Mike. Is it?
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, Mike. How are you?
Oh, very well, thank you.
Good. Well, Dave is sitting over there, so
Evening.
please fire away.
Yes, I was going to ask you, Dave, was Wish You Were Here deliberately put together to be, let's say, less commercial than Dark Side, more the real Floyd?
Well, you see, we never started off trying to make Dark Side of the Moon specifically as a commercial thing.
Right, it tended to develop as that, even though it may not have been intended.
I mean, we always wanted it to sell a lot of records, but you can't forecast that sort of commercialism. It wasn't an attempt on our part to pander to the public and make it more commercially acceptable. And by that reasoning, the Wish You Were Here was the same process. There was no deliberate attempt to make it less or more commercial.
So you would say it was the buying public and the fans, so to speak, that made it commercial rather than yourself?
Oh, no, we made it commercial, but it wasn't...
deliberate?
Yes, it was deliberate. I mean, we did want to make it commercial. It's... the process wasn't any different for either of them. I mean, there's no magic formula we can produce to turn out stuff that we know people are going to buy. We just play it by ear, whatever we think is the right thing at the right time. We don't sit around thinking about what's going to sell at all. We just sit in the studio and do whatever comes.
With that in mind, why were the two tracks, You've Got to Be Crazy and Raving and Drooling, left off the album that were played at the live concerts previously?
We did have all sorts of long discussions about this very subject. I actually would have preferred to have put one of those at least on the Wish You Were Here album with Just Shine On, without the stuff that we actually put on in the middle.
It was a refreshing change, mind you, for it to happen.
Yeah. It was. It's all a matter of what we decide en masse, all four of us, and I got outvoted on that particular thing.
I'm sure it'll be appearing in the future, perhaps.
Well, we're having a crack at it right at the moment, actually.
Good.
When Roger gets back from skiing.
Skiing. All right.
Mike, thank you very much indeed for calling.
Thank you.
Answered the question.
Yes, it's very good.
Cheers.
Good night.
Good night. That change still makes my eyes water. From Have a Cigar, Roy Harper on lead vocal, the Floyd from Wish You Were Here, and that was Have a Cigar. We were talking about that classic line in it, oh, by the way, which one's pink? I mean, the whole song is obviously a satirical look at the business, the rock business as such. And you were saying that is actually a line. I mean, I thought it was just a jokey.
Well, we always look on it as a joke, of course, but it used to be a fairly common line that used to get asked of us by interviewers and Joe Public. Quite commonly, not so much recently, of course. I guess they know.
Pink?
Yeah, they really used to ask it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been discussing over the last hour and a half or thereabouts the type of songs that the band put out, and mostly they're about sort of people's brains, what goes on in them or what doesn't.
What else is there?
The sort of music business, but you rarely talk about love.
Oh, I think you could find a few if you looked for them. You've played one that's just about love tonight already. And the one on Obscured by Clouds, it seems to me that was all about love. Mind you, you'd have to ask Rog. If you wrote it...
I mean, pure love is rarely featured.
Well, it's rarely focused on by a lot of people, but there are quite a few. I'm not... yeah, there are quite a few if you look for them.
Well, they're not obvious.
No.
There are no obvious sort of love or songs.
Well,
about.
they're the ones that people look upon, I guess, and we do as well sometimes as kind of throwaway things that are there on certainly on the ones that you call the definitive tracks. None of those are in that sort of a vein, but a lot of the other tracks on some of the soundtrack albums and some of the other albums, when there's one or two songs stuck on there that maybe tended to get thought about a little less as we did them. No, I don't really mean that. I mean, we had huge arguments about exactly what to do on some of those albums, and some of us thought we should just put some songs on because that was part of what we were about, and some of us thought we should turn the whole thing into one subject concept for the whole album, and that's the way they worked out. Well, we did it like that. I don't know to this day whether it's the right thing to do or the wrong thing. Roger certainly has got a bit of an obsession with making the whole album into a one subject deal, into what you might call a concept album, if you're so inclined.
I suppose you hate the word concept. I mean, there's no...
Well, it's a bit jaded, isn't it?
Yeah, a bit old that. And I believe Mina is on the line. I hope I pronounced your name right.
My name's Nina.
Mina?
Yes.
Oh, right.
And this is Nikki and David?
Right. I'm Nikki, him David.
I'm on vacation here from New York, and I saw your concert in New Jersey, Roosevelt Stadium. Afterwards, I went out and bought your album, Wish You Were Here, and, you completely dumbfounded me with your illustrations on it. Could you tell me if they signify anything, or, could you expand on it a little?
We have some friends who do all that stuff, the album covers, and we work with them, and we sit and discuss ideas that they come up with, and we reject some, and we accept some, obviously. And the whole album is about, as the title suggests, Wish You Were Here, someone isn't, some form of absence, and in all the pictures, all the illustrations on the cover, there is some form of absence. And I think
the shaking hands, though, which sort of is a coming together, it's more so an opposite of the absence. There are two men shaking hands. One looks sort of like an Arab,
I don't think.
You said that, I suppose. They're sort of shaking hands, which to me symbolize some kind of worldwide friendship or something.
Well.
Maybe I'm just getting a bit too heavy about, a couple of pictures.
There's a lot of stuff in it that I don't even know about, to do with the people who do this sort of stuff. But mostly all the pictures have got something that's absent to do with those pictures, and that's what they're, I believe, supposed to signify.
So, for instance, the illustrative part of recording and music, you really don't get involved in. I mean, you just go out there and play your music and record it. You don't get involved in all the technicalities of,
Yes, we do. We do get involved in them, and we do sit and discuss them, and on some of the albums we have actually come up with the ideas ourselves. But we have got other people whose ideas we like and respect a lot, who do work towards making stuff that they think is suitable and is relevant to our music. And if we agree with that, then we go along with it.
Yeah, it's cool.
Mina, thank you very much indeed for calling, love.
Thanks a lot, then.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Good night. That's the Sutherland Brothers and Quiver from their album called Reach for the Sky, and that was Love on the Moon. You produced the B-side of their current single.
Latest waxing, yes.
Yes, latest waxing. Right. I'd like to take at least 3 or 4 more telephone calls from you before we finish up the programme and head towards Tony. And I believe that Steve is on the line now. He wants to talk about Wish You Were Here. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah.
Okay, good evening.
Just before Wish You Were Here came out, there were some good reviews on it, but a few of them were saying, well, in a nutshell, they were saying that you've run out of ideas, you have finished, you've had your time, and you're on the decline. What did you think about that?
Well, quite frankly, all criticism hurts.
Yeah.
but not so much as we're liable to give up. I guess they're entitled to their opinion. I don't know. I don't think we've run out of ideas. I think we've got a long run in front of us. But you never know. You never know, do you? I mean...
So you think you're okay for a good few more years?
Well, I've got plenty of ideas, and I'm sure all the others have got plenty of ideas, so it's a matter of whether they're good ones or not. That's all down to people's personal taste, I guess.
Steve, can I just come in here and ask what you personally thought of Wish You Were Here?
Personally, I did buy Dark Side of the Moon, and by the time Wish You Were Here were out, I was, sick to death of Dark Side of the Moon. I thought it was really good.
Good. So really the criticism that was levelled by the press and the media didn't really apply to you, right?
No, not at all.
Good. Fine. Steve, thank you for calling.
Right, thanks very much.
Cheers. Good night. What is it? It's an obvious question. Production or musicianship? I mean, production obviously is a totally different environment to actually sitting in a studio, standing in a studio and strumming away as your lead guitar. But what gives you... obviously gives you pleasure. But what gives you the most?
Yes, no, being a musician and doing it all gives me the most pleasure. That's what I want to be. I'm not getting in a bit of practice for my pension.
There's a sort of thing that is levelled against the Floyd all the time. Not level, but one of the things that people talk about with the Floyd is, will the Floyd ever be doing individual albums? Will each member be doing their own album?
I think at this point, there certainly are things in each of us that we find we can't do within the Pink Floyd setup. And I think probably all of us, most of us, at least, will at some point do solo albums because we'll feel that we have to. I'm certain about Roger, and I'm certain about myself that at some point we will do something on our own, because there are, and with any four people, there are going to be compromises and restrictions on what you do. And while that is fine in most instances, there are sometimes going to be, and in the end there will be things that you need to do without compromise with other people. So certainly I think at one point that will have to happen, yes.
Okay, let's come back with another call from Chris in just a minute. Chris.
Good evening, Nick.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, nice to speak to you. Hope you're having a good show up there. It certainly sounds very good on this end.
It's quite fun.
It's fun up here as well.
Great. The thing I wanted to ask Dave was actually, Nicky, the Floyd has never left England, or as far as I know, through tax reasons of this country.
This is true.
Yeah, is this because lack of money, or is they earning too much?
Neither. I don't believe in all that stuff, personally speaking. I mean, I'm quite happy to have a bit of a gripe about the tax man at times, but everyone has to pay it, and no different for anyone. I think anyone can manage quite all right if they want to. I certainly don't plan on leaving. I don't know if anyone else does in the band.
Yeah.
It's not... I live in England. I plan to continue doing that. And fair dues with the taxman, I say.
Do all the others of the band actually, Dave? Do they all live in England as well?
They all do, yes, all of them.
And they all hope to stay for,
I didn't say that. I certainly hope to stay. I'm not going anywhere. You'd have to ask each of them if you wanted to really find out the truth about that, all the way down the line.
Yeah.
Okay, Chris.
Right, lovely.
Thank you for calling in.
Thanks very much, Nicky.
Cheers, mate.
Good night.
Good night. Steve. Thank you very much. It has been magnificent this evening. Really have enjoyed it. Hope you have as well.
Okay, yeah, fine.
And I shall look forward to that live set that you'll possibly be doing in November.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks again. And we play out tonight and go into Tony Martin.